What happens when two of the most beloved stars in the world stand on the same stage, not as characters in a scripted drama, but as partners whose real-life story has already captured millions of hearts? That question lingered in the air during one unforgettable awards night, when Hyun and Ye-jin walked onto the stage together to receive their popularity awards. For a moment, the entire hall seemed to pause. The applause began slowly, almost cautiously, as if the audience itself was realizing the significance of what they were witnessing. Then the cheers grew louder, echoing across the venue like a wave of admiration that had been building for years. Because this was not just another awards ceremony. This was the continuation of a story that had blurred the line between fiction and reality. The lights of the auditorium reflected softly across the polished stage as Hyun and Ye-jin approached the microphone together. The crowd's energy was electric, but the two actors themselves appeared calm, almost quietly overwhelmed by the warmth surrounding them. Many in the audience remembered exactly where this journey had begun. Years earlier, their on-screen chemistry in Crash Landing on You had ignited one of the most unforgettable romantic stories in modern television. Viewers across the globe had followed the emotional arc of their characters with intense devotion. At the time, it was simply a drama, a beautifully written story brought to life by talented performers. But something about the connection between Hyun and Ye-jin felt different even then. The emotions seemed too real, the glances too sincere, the moments of vulnerability too natural to feel entirely fictional. Fans noticed it immediately, and when the two stars later confirmed their relationship in real life, the world erupted in celebration. Now, standing side by side beneath the bright lights of an awards ceremony, that story felt more real than ever. As the host announced their names, the applause surged once again. Hyun gently gestured for Ye-jin to step forward first, a small gesture that did not go unnoticed by the audience. She smiled softly before accepting the award, her expression carrying a mixture of gratitude and quiet amusement at the overwhelming reaction from the crowd. When Hyun received his own award moments later, he stood beside her again, holding the trophy with a calm composure that had defined his career for years. But what happened next was the moment that fans would later replay again and again. As the two prepared to speak, Hyun glanced briefly towards Ye-jin. It was a simple look, almost fleeting. Yet something in that glance carried a warmth that cameras captured perfectly. Ye-jin responded with a small laugh, as if sharing a private moment that only the two of them fully understood. The audience noticed instantly. A ripple of delighted reactions spread through the crowd. Because in that brief exchange, the world saw something rare. Not actors performing affection, not celebrities maintaining an image, but two people who genuinely cared for each other. When Ye-jin began her speech, her voice carried a gentle calm that filled the room. She thanked the fans who had supported her throughout her career, speaking with sincerity about the importance of gratitude and perseverance. Then, almost casually, she turned slightly toward Hyun. Her eyes softened as she mentioned how meaningful it was to stand there together. The audience erupted again. Hyun listened quietly, his expression revealing both pride and admiration. When it was his turn to speak, he began with the usual words of thanks to fans and colleagues. Yet there was a subtle shift in his tone when he acknowledged the journey that had brought them to this moment. He spoke not only as an actor receiving recognition, but as someone aware that their shared story had become something deeply meaningful to millions of people watching around the world. The applause returned once more, louder than before. In that moment, the awards themselves almost felt secondary. What truly mattered was the atmosphere. The sense that the audience was witnessing something genuine, something heartfelt. As the two stars stood together holding their trophies, the cameras captured the moment from every angle. Hyun briefly leaned closer to say something quietly to Ye-jin. She smiled again, a soft, natural smile that seemed completely untouched by the formal environment around them. Fans watching the broadcast immediately began sharing clips online. Within minutes, social media platforms filled with comments describing the scene as one of the sweetest moments in awards show history. Some viewers said it felt like watching the final chapter of a romantic drama. Others described it as proof that real love stories can exist even within the glamorous world of entertainment. For many fans, however, the beauty of the moment came from its simplicity. There were no grand declarations, no dramatic speeches about romance, only small gestures, a glance, a shared laugh, two people standing together with quiet pride. And sometimes, those quiet moments carry more meaning than any carefully scripted performance. As Hyun and Ye-jin finally stepped away from the stage, the audience remained standing, applauding them long after the host had moved on to the next segment of the ceremony. It was a rare kind of appreciation, not just for their work as actors, but for the story they had allowed the world to witness. A story that began on screen, a story that grew into real life. And a moment on stage that reminded everyone watching that sometimes the most beautiful scenes are the ones that are not written in any script. And yet the moment did not end when the applause slowly faded inside the auditorium. In many ways, that quiet walk away from the stage was where the real emotion of the evening began to unfold. As Hyun and Ye-jin stepped down from the spotlight, cameras continued to follow their movements from a distance. The audience had already witnessed their acceptance speeches, their smiles, their brief exchange on stage. But what happened afterward revealed something even more touching. For a moment, the two paused just beyond the edge of the stage. The lights there were softer, the atmosphere calmer. Away from the microphone, away from the center of attention, they looked at each other again, as if still processing the overwhelming reaction they had just received from the crowd. It was a small pause in time, barely noticeable to anyone who was not watching closely. But to fans observing every detail, it felt deeply meaningful. Hyun quietly adjusted his grip on the trophy before turning slightly towards Ye-jin, speaking a few words that the cameras could not fully capture. She listened, nodding gently, her expression filled with the same warmth that had become so familiar to audiences around the world. Those few seconds carried a kind of intimacy rarely seen in public events. Not dramatic, not performative, simply two people sharing a moment together. Inside the venue, the ceremony continued with the usual rhythm of awards presentations and performances. But in the minds of many viewers, the emotional peak of the night had already passed. Because what they had witnessed was not just another awards show highlight. It was the quiet continuation of a love story that had begun years earlier on the set of the beloved drama Crash Landing on You. That series had introduced millions of viewers to a romance that felt almost impossibly powerful. The characters portrayed by Hyun and Ye-jin seemed to exist in a world where love could cross borders, overcome obstacles, and transform lives. When the final episode aired, many fans believed the magic of that story would remain forever within the boundaries of fiction. But reality had written its own chapter. The relationship between the two actors gradually became one of the most celebrated love stories in the entertainment world. Their eventual marriage and growing family only deepened the admiration fans felt toward them. And so, when they stood on stage together receiving popularity awards, the moment felt symbolic. It was not just recognition for their performances. It was recognition of a journey that audiences had followed from the beginning. Backstage that evening, industry insiders later described the atmosphere as unusually emotional. Colleagues congratulated the couple warmly, many expressing how meaningful it was to see them honored together. Some fellow actors reportedly joked that their presence alone had raised the emotional temperature of the entire ceremony. But behind the laughter and congratulations, there was genuine respect. Because both Hyun and Ye-jin had built extraordinary careers long before their paths crossed. Each had spent years perfecting their craft, earning awards, and shaping the modern landscape of Korean cinema and television. Their success was never defined solely by their relationship. Yet the world could not help but feel inspired by the way their personal story intertwined with their professional achievements. Later in the evening, as guests mingled during the reception, cameras once again caught glimpses of the couple interacting quietly with friends and colleagues. At one point, Hyun was seen listening attentively while Ye-jin spoke with another actress, occasionally smiling as the conversation unfolded. It was a subtle scene, but once again, fans noticed the details. The natural comfort between them, the ease of two people who had learned to navigate both fame and personal life together. Online, the clips from the awards ceremony continued spreading rapidly. Millions of viewers replayed the moment when they stood on stage together holding their trophies. The shared glance, the quiet laughter, the gentle way Hyun bin allowed son Ye-jin to step forward first. Comment sections filled with emotional responses from fans across different countries and cultures. Many described the moment as proof that genuine love can exist even within the dazzling world of entertainment. Others simply called it beautiful, because sometimes beauty does not come from elaborate speeches or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it appears in small, authentic interactions that reveal the humanity behind the fame. As the ceremony finally came to an end and the lights of the auditorium dimmed, Hyun bin and son Ye-jin quietly exited the venue along with the other guests. There were no grand announcements, no dramatic farewell, just a calm departure into the night. Yet the memory of that stage moment remained. Two actors, two partners, standing together before a cheering audience, holding not only their awards, but the admiration of millions who had watched their journey unfold. And perhaps that is why fans continue to call it the sweetest scene. Because in an industry built on scripted stories and carefully crafted performances, the most unforgettable moment of the night felt completely real. A reminder that sometimes the greatest love stories are not written by screenwriters. Sometimes they are simply lived.